Good evening and welcome to the City Council Truth-in-Taxation Public Hearing and Input Meeting for December 3, 2018. It being 6 o'clock, I'd like to call to order the Truth-in-Taxation hearing. Note the roll call with all members of the Council present, City Administrator. The agenda this evening would be first to have the budget and levy for 2019 introduced by the City Administrator, City Council if there's any questions or comments, and then public input, questions and comments. And we will start with the presentation of the City Administrator, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm going to sit up front here because my microphone is inoperative, so it'll be better to pick up for people in the audience as well as on the recording. So as you indicated, Mr. Mayor, the purpose of this meeting is to have a Truth in Taxation public hearing and allow the public input on the city's proposed 2019 budget and the proposed 2019 levy that'll be collectible in 2019. The information that I would like to go through tonight, we've included at your seats tonight a copy of a packet of materials that includes the highlights and summary memo that I prepared on Friday night and emailed to you. It's been included in this packet of materials. It's actually about 8 pages, and then but it's in large print. Then attached to that, and the public has the same packet of information available, and if there's anybody that doesn't have it, please let me know. I've got a few extra copies. So I plan to just, in summary form, just talk about the comments that I've provided. The next attachment in the packet is a copy of the draft resolution that the City Council will be asked to pass at the regular meeting on December 17th, which is 2 weeks from tonight. And at that meeting, we would plan on incorporating any changes that the City Council might propose tonight based on the public input that we receive, as well as any comments that you might have at a Budget and Finance Committee meeting that's scheduled for next Monday afternoon. Attached to the draft resolution is a copy of Exhibit A. And Exhibit A is probably the single page that lays out in summary form what the history is with our proposed levies, the history with the local government aid that we've received from 2014 through 2019, as well as where we've made appropriations to other agencies and for other purposes, as well as the primary expenditures and revenues by fund in the city's budget. Also attached in here is a copy of the 2019 budget summary for partnership agencies. So we've outlined in a spreadsheet form the various agency funding that we've done over past years from 2015 through proposed 2019. And then you'll see some pie charts that compare 2018 budgeted revenues with 2019 budgeted revenues. Then there's another pie chart for 2018 budgeted expenditures and 2019 budgeted expenditures, as well as some summary documents related to the levy and LGA history. So briefly, I just want to go through those documents, and then of course at the conclusion of my presentation I'd be available to try and respond to any questions that the council might have or any of your comments, and then of course we want to receive public input after that as well. I think the primary point to preparing this budget, and one of the primary goals of the City Council was in 2018 as well as 2019, is to provide adequate funds to address our public infrastructure and funding public infrastructure improvements. So in preparing this budget as well as the budget for 2018, the City Council really looked at trying to channel as much funds as possible into doing public improvements. Those improvements include, and some people question what is public infrastructure? Well, it basically just deals with our streets, our sanitary sewer system and water mains underground, as well as our storm sewer systems, street lighting, concrete curb and gutter, bituminous improvements, and things of that nature. One of the unique things, so we've tried to channel as many resources as we can into those particular line items, as well as funding the operational budgets that we need to in the police department, the fire department, the ambulance department, and all the other functions that city staff perform on behalf of the public. Regarding this particular document that you have before you tonight, now we had a Budget and Finance Committee meeting here recently. I think it was on the 26th of November. A couple of you were not present, so on page 1 and page 2, I've just outlined some of the changes that were made. And I think the principal changes were that we added some of the funding for other public agency requests back into the original request, which had previously been looked at and revised in a downward fashion at earlier Budget and Finance Committee meetings. I guess I laid that out primarily on the top of page 3. So I've laid that information out, and I guess the important information there is that you'll see, and there's a handout later on, that the funding for the agency request was basically restored to the levels that they requested originally back going to the summer of this year. The other, I think, good fortune and good news is that for 2019 budget, but actually what happened on November 6th of 2018 is the public ratified and approved by a majority vote of over 60% of the people voting to allow the city to move forward with a 1% sales and use tax. And again, that sales and use tax is focused primarily on funding transportation and public infrastructure improvements going forward. But that's only the first step. The City Council has moved forward and authorized by resolution a request to the 2019 Minnesota Legislature to consider approving special legislation to allow the city to actually impose that 1% sales tax. So that'll be something that has to transpire with this upcoming legislative session, and both Senator Bach and Representative Eklund have indicated that they will support moving that legislation through the legislature. And ultimately, at some point during the legislative session between January and sometime in May, the sales and use tax and special legislation has to be adopted by the legislature and then also signed by the governor before it can be effective. Assuming that they move forward and do that, then the City Council actually has to adopt an ordinance establishing the sales and use tax, and then that ordinance is forwarded to the Minnesota Department of Revenue, which by statute is allowed up to 90 days to actually implement the system and assist the local businesses in implementing the 1% sales tax. So on a fast track or a best case scenario, assuming all those approvals transpire, the earliest we would see the sales and use tax being imposed on the people purchasing products in the city of International Falls would probably be starting in October of 2019. And the first time that the city would receive any proceeds from that would be, they pay us on a quarterly basis, so it would probably be January or April of 2020. So I bring that information up and detailed information just to let you know that the sales and use tax has not been incorporated into this budget. We have no special fund set up to collect those revenues or to make the expenditures because of this long planning horizon that has to take place with legislative approval, governor's approval, and then the Department of Revenue to move forward to it. But assuming all those approvals occur, we for certain would expect to have the accounting infrastructure in place for the budget year 2020. On page 4, I've outlined what's some of the history on the property tax levy. For 2018, we had a certified local government aid amount. It increased by 0.14% or $5,865. So we're receiving $5,865 more dollars in local government aid in 2019 than we received in 2018. For comparison purposes, in 2018 we received roughly a $93,000 increase. So this is really kind of a flat revenue. It's a very nominal amount of increase. You can see that for the years 2012 to 2014, our property tax levies were held constant at 0% increases. For the years 2015 through 2019, it increased 2%, 4%, 5%, 9% in 2018, and this proposed budget has a 9% increase. Would bring our total proposed tax levy to $2,791,464. That levy increase will generate about $230,488 in additional revenue above 2018. But again, our local government aid had gone up over $93,000, so we actually saw $305,000 approximately in new money in 2018, whereas this year we're seeing about $235,000, $236,000 with the LGA increase. I've identified the ambulance fund for special notes here. As you all know, the ambulance service has its own fund because it's an enterprise fund, meaning it ideally would be self-supporting. The City Council has recently approved an increase in the new rate structure for the ambulance service. That new rate structure would be effective on January 1st of 2019, and the reason for that new rate structure is to address a accumulating cash deficit that we've been experiencing over the last several operational years. To address that in the past, we've tried to hold off on purchasing new ambulances, so the 2018 and the 2019 budgets have no increase for a new ambulance, and each year, or for each new ambulance, it costs roughly $170,000 for a new box and a new chassis. So it's a fairly expensive venture, and we've tried to hold off and run our existing ambulances as long as possible. We will need to look at purchasing another ambulance for the 2020 calendar year. The total budget for the ambulance, at least proposed for 2019, based on our anticipated runs, would be revenues of $1,441,854 and expenditures of the same amount for calendar year 2019. We expect the new rate structure will generate just over $300,000 in new revenue, and we're hoping that that helps us address over time the funding deficit that we've been experiencing in the ambulance fund.
How realistic is that hope?
Well, I think the projections based on the number of 2017 runs and based on the analysis of the consultant that we've hired, Mike Metro, who is a deputy fire chief from LA County. He's a renowned speaker on a national basis, and he's doing a study on our behalf looking at the ambulance service. And so he's completed his phase 1 analysis, and that's what the City Council used to base our rate increases on. And the projection is about $300,000 in new revenues, and we were looking at about $260,000 in deficit spending, so we're assuming we'll have somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000 to the black in the ambulance fund. But it's based entirely on the reimbursement structure that we have with our ambulances, and as he was very careful to point out, for any Medicare and Medicaid runs that we get reimbursed for, the reimbursement is, I believe it was 43% and 35% for those two. Our average is about 46% of what we bill. So it's an unfortunate circumstance with the rate structure and the reimbursement structure that exists throughout the nation, and that's what's prompting this change in our rates. But we're anticipating that will be revenue and expense neutral at a minimum.
Okay, but I do want to, as I recall, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of the ambulance tonight, but I don't think this revenue, I don't want anybody out there to believe that for a minute that this revenue increase is going to fix the deficit, because as I recall, Mike Metro said you've really got to look at some other structure to deal with capital outlay for the ambulance.
That's right, that's part of the solution, and that's part of what we need to look at. Mr. Metro's consultant study is based on 2 phases. We've received the first phase. The second phase is due to be received by the city on or about December 12th. So I think you'll have some other operational recommendations in that, and we really need to address with this council, perhaps at the December 17th meeting, but for certain with the new city council at the beginning of the year, those recommendations and try and assess what we want to move forward with and see if we can't do more in the way of cost containment as well as more in revenue generation to make sure that we're generating sufficient funds to meet our operational expenses in the ambulance fund.
Not to go down the rabbit hole, just one more comment. I did think that Chief Manassa had some revenue generating ideas that didn't necessarily pull the ambulance authority out of the city either. So I thought he had some suggestions. So that was, but I'm not clear what that was at this moment. But
well, and one of the things I think Councilor Droba had encouraged us to do is that, as the council might know, is that when we have excuse me, ambulance responses in St. Louis County, we receive a per mileage reimbursement from St. Louis County. I believe it's about 21 cents a mile. So when we have to respond in our primary service area, some of which is, the majority of which is in Koochiching County, it's about 989 square miles, but there is a portion in the northern portion of St. Louis County, and when we have responses to St. Louis County, we're reimbursed 21 cents a mile for those runs, and I think there was some consideration of implementing some kind of a reimbursement schedule in Koochiching County for areas outside of the city that would help generate additional revenues there. So that would be one option. And again, I think we'll have a better picture when we receive Mr. Metro's Phase 2 study mid-month this month. Moving on then, I just wanted to point out that the International Falls Economic Development Authority has a fairly flat general fund expense budget. It's only $5,000. About $4,250 of that is for consultant expenses, and the rest is for office expenses, so that's been flat. I did talk earlier on about public works and infrastructure being a high budget priority for the City Council, and I've identified some projects that are coming forward for the city. In 2020, I've identified the Highway 53 reconstruction project, and as you all know, MnDOT is currently in the preliminary design phases and engineering work to reconstruct Highway 53. That reconstruction will occur on the south end at Memorial Drive and commence all the way north to the intersection of 2nd Street and 2nd Avenue North. It's going to be a major reconstruction that involves improving handicapped accessibility, replacing and updating signals, street lighting, storm sewer systems, sidewalks, trails, overhead utilities, accesses to various businesses, and then street pavement upgrade. And so that work is projected to occur in 2020. Will probably carry over in the year 2021. We're looking at, and we've had a visual quality committee that's been meeting with MnDOT officials and their engineering consultants, and we've been looking at incorporating more green space and plantings on the boulevards to try and improve the amenities along the corridor. But that project does have some local share to it, and right now, without really paring down any of the project, the MnDOT engineering consultant's estimate for the city share is $1,225,000. Again, that is subject to change, but we need to provide that amount of money to them at the outset of the bidding for that project, which in our last conversations with them, they indicated would probably happen in the spring of 2020, but potentially could be as early as the fall of 2019. So that's a big impact to the city to make that local share contribution on that project that, again, will go forward in 2020 and 2021.
That isn't in our budget this year.
No, it is not. 401 Improvement Fund, or the Permanent Improvement Fund. The Permanent Improvement Fund is where we identify and allocate monies to do improvements to our public infrastructure. We've got about $800,000 that are coming from the water and sewer funds. And again, the water and sewer funds, we generate revenues from our water utility billings and our sanitary sewer utility billings. And so we have $800,000 being put in the permanent improvement fund from those two sources. And then there's only $49,287 coming from the property tax levy going to the 401 Permanent Improvement Fund. So that total for 2019 is $849,287. We had to pare back the levy portion this year because of other funding requirements. On page 6 of 8, I've identified the Water Fund 601 and then the Sewer Fund 603. What's noteworthy here is that the water and the sewer fund in the past have been a combined fund. We've been working with the auditors and we've talked with the council over the last 2 or 3 years about separating those two funds. So the 2019 budget year will be the first year where we separated the water and sewer fund, and I will show what those amounts are when I get to the pie charts, but we've explained what we've done here. There was a increase in the water rates for 2019. Those were set in an ordinance that was adopted very early in 2018, and there was no change in the sewer funds. Again, I think what would be noteworthy about the sanitary sewer rates, historically they've been higher than the water rates, and the vast majority of those revenues that we get through our sanitary sewer rates go to the North Couchiching Area Sanitary District for treating our wastewater. The North Couch budget for 2019, which has not been finalized, but their estimated budget shows that about $1,254,000 will be paid from the flows that and the revenues generated from the city of International Falls. I think the number for Rainier was about $20,000 and was in the $170,000 range for the East Couchiching Sanitary District. So the vast majority of revenue that comes into the North Couch Sewer District for treating waste comes from the city of International Falls.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
I'm wondering, now that we've separated out, we have a fund balance then for water and sewer that we never used to have?
Well, we did have a fund balance. It was
But
just
we
a
didn't know what
consolidated
part was
combined
water,
fund balance.
what
Right.
part was sewer. So we separated that out. We have two fund balances now, right?
Well, effective in January of 2019, yes.
We don't have it yet.
We separated them, and we're showing what's projected for 2019 expenditures.
This isn't the fund balance.
No.
So what I'm asking is, what do those fund balances look like for water versus sewer?
We don't have,
Oh, you don't have it yet? Oh, okay.
we're going to be the water and sewer for the budgeting. We've
Okay.
got to work out all those details to move all of that as of the end of the year. Once we get that.
Be interesting to see what that is. Okay. Can I go back? Or you want me to shut up? Got one question. And I've been on this council for a while, and I'm still a little vague about this, so I do think that other people probably are too. Okay. So when we talk about, and I've asked this before, but I need to have it answered again, so indulge me. The reserve for capital outlay versus permanent improvement, how is that different from one another?
The reserve for capital outlay are monies that we set aside to make future acquisitions in infrastructure, equipment, and or facilities. And so the reserve for capital outlay, the 402 fund, sets aside money for future acquisitions, and the permanent improvement fund is primarily for the underground infrastructure and streets. So the city, and that's outlined in the charter actually talks about the permanent improvement fund as well as or primarily the permanent improvement fund.
Okay, so does the reserve for capital outlay, is that the total of that comes from the line items in the departmental budgets, right? So that each departmental budget has a certain amount for reserve for capital outlay, and that's consolidated under 402?
It's in the 402 fund, but the 402 fund identifies specific capital outlay departments. So for instance, replacing a fire truck or a future ambulance, or not ambulance, but a future fire truck or other kinds of public works improvement equipment would be outlined in the capital outlay fund. There is a 403 fund which is reserved for capital outlay, and that's dedicated for water and sewer. And so that's a separate fund than the 402 for more for capital outlay and improvements like curb and gutter and those types of things.
Thank you.
One point that I would make regarding the sewer fund, 603, the new sewer fund, is that one of the things that the council is working with through the North Couchiching Area Sanitary District is that there is a schedule of compliance that they're working with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to try and minimize inflow and infiltration. And again, part of that would be may necessitate making upgrades to our sanitary sewer infrastructure. And so that's part of what's driving some of these future costs, is to try and address that. So the city's been very proactive in televising some of our sanitary sewer lines. You can see at the bottom of page 6, it gets into the capital improvement plan. And we've been working over the last 2 years with our consulting engineers, WSN. WSN has made a concerted effort to work with other consultants to televise our sanitary sewer system, try and assess the condition of our sanitary sewer underground pipe, and then identify what needs to improve and try and prioritize that. And I personally just want to commend the City Council for having the vision to allow us to move forward with getting this assessment and condition report on our streets, our water system, and our sanitary sewer system, so we can identify what our costs are. And having done that, we've identified over the next 15 years through our consulting engineers, we've got about $17,509,195 identified in improvement costs over the next 15 years to try and update the streets, which exceeded over $7 million, the water system, which exceeded over $7 million, and then just a small part of the sanitary sewer system in the older part of town here by downtown was $2.8 million. And the engineers said we could probably look at another $10 to $12 million if you bring in the entire city, but we haven't had an opportunity to televise all that. So we're making a concerted effort to try and assess the conditions of our infrastructure, and that provided the basis for the council to move forward with the sales and use tax that we move forward on. And so we feel fortunate that the public authorized the City Council to move forward with that sales and use tax based on that information. On page 7, I've identified the airport fund a little bit. Again, the airport is a joint venture with the Couchiching County. City of International Falls and Couchiching County are 50% ownership interest in the airport. And the airport has been undergoing some improvements over the last couple of years. We've completed phase 1 of the airport terminal project. Phase 2 of the airport terminal project is currently underway. I think what's noteworthy about the phase 2 project is that $3 million in state bonding monies were allocated to try and do that phase 2. There was no cost to the city and the county for going forward with phase 2, which is really a compliment to the work that the Airport Commission has done to try and get outside sources of money to do that. The phase 2 project will primarily involve providing facilities for the TSA and Customs and Border Protection for their offices. The phase 1 project was the terminal building and the improved airport screening area and waiting area and the jet bridge for the public's use. So that's been completed, and I think it's been very well received. And I think the Airport Commission, or the airport's seeing increasing enplanements as a result of those improvements. Another important project that's starting out with phase 1 is an airport runway reconstruction project. the airport costs increase from about $299,000, and that would be for operations on the city share, to about $354,000 proposed for 2019, and that includes the city's share for operations as well as for the Phase 1 cost to reconstruct the main airport runway. The main airport runway will be undertaken in 4 phases, and the city's share for Phase 2 and Phase 3 are going to be over $300,000 in the years 2020 and 2021 as it's projected right now. So we're going to have to identify revenue sources for that additional revenue demand in the upcoming years. So that's something that we're going to have to sharpen our pencils on in the next couple years. Again, Coochin County pays an equal share for the local share of those costs. I do want to make the point, and the mayor would be better to speak to this than I am, but we feel very fortunate in having a great partnership with the MnDOT Office of Aeronautics as well as the FAA, and our government officials should be commended again because for airports, 95% of the funding is funded through the Federal Aviation Administration. So the city pays a local share, and with the state's contribution, they pay 2.5%. So we're only paying 2.5% of those runway reconstruction costs, and while they're significant costs, the city's share is relatively minimal. So we think that that's really a benefit to the community and the county as a whole.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of passion over in the leadership over there for the airport, and I commend them. I know, Mayor Anderson, you've worked very hard for 40 years for the airport. I do think, however, that $300,000 a year in 20 and 21 is a problem. I don't know. I won't be here to solve it, but it's an issue. Because we really don't have any money now for P&I. Some other communities, I'm going to raise it here, and I've raised it before. Some other communities, like Bemidji, for instance, that has an airport, they've gone to a taxing district simply because it wasn't within their capacity. And they're a richer community than we are. And so I don't know if the council isn't going to be forced to look at a different funding mechanism, because right now we only had money for $49,000 in P&I. And we're going to be facing a $300,000 request in 2020 for the airport for P&I. So that means, I don't know, I just don't know. Do you?
Oh, but I don't know that the taxing district, it still requires monies from the taxpayers, and we'll have to determine what our priorities are come 2020. The city council will.
But you can't cut P&I when you only have $49,000 allocated now.
But aren't we allocating $300,000 this year?
That's for operations.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I bet.
operations and improvements.
Well, how much is that
For
for?
next year, for 2019?
What are the operations portion of that? $299? No.
It was $299 for 2018. It's about the same this year. I don't have the exact number. I have it downstairs, but I don't have it here.
The operations run about $580,000 a year then, roughly, to just operate the terminal. That's over and above capital outlay. And the federal government supports correct me if I'm wrong, but they support the capital improvements for the airport. They don't support operations of the airport except through a tax on the seats.
But we do receive funds from the Minnesota Department of Transportation Aeronautics. We receive about $70,000 a year for operations also.
Operations. And then there's about $55,000 a year and a tax on your plane ticket?
Yes.
But anyway, be that as it may, so then I think the operations are actually higher. I think they're more like $700,000 a year total.
I don't think so. But to sort it out.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but I guess I just want to say, one thing about a taxing district is that it distributes the burden more equitably than we've been faced under the current situation, because as it works now, and I used to say this a lot, but I'll say it one more time and then I'll be gone, is that the city taxpayers pay 50% of the operating costs, of the share that's of the operating costs. Taking out whatever monies come in for the, take the operating costs, subtract the tax on the seats and any money MnDOT gives us, that remainder there is about $580,000 a year, and that's split 50-50 between the county and the city. City taxpayers pay their whole part. County taxpayers don't pay any of that. And then the city taxpayers turn around and support the county as well. And as the city administrator pointed out early on in his career here, he said, actually, that has already been ruled on. It is not something that the county should be doing. When they calculate the levy for city taxpayers, they should subtract out their $299,000 for operations out of the amount and then distribute it over to the city taxpayers, because we're essentially being levied twice. Now, I don't want to, I mean, that could have been an argument in court. I didn't think it was very productive to go there. I think the route we took with the sales tax maybe is more productive. But ultimately, a taxing district would provide more equitable treatment of the support for the operations of the airport. And if you look at how the airport is used, one of the primary reasons to have that airport is because of our paper mill here. We need it for that. Evidently, we need it for that. But that paper mill employs people from the entire region, not just the city taxpayers. And secondly, 40% of the employments I've had it are Canadians.
Councillor, I'd like to stick with the levy and the budget discussions. And I know your passion for.
I won't be here next year, so I'm just registering that.
Well, thank you for those comments. I'll try and keep the rest of my comments very brief. I did just want to point out, too, for the public's sake, is that right now the City of International Falls is debt-free, so we don't have any outstanding bonded indebtedness. We have 3 union contracts that are currently in place, and they'll be in place through 2020. So for 2019, this budget shows employee wage increases of 1.5% for 2019. And for all 3 of the unions, our contribution for the employees' health insurance will go up $50 per month per employee. So for 2019, the city will be paying up to $1,250 per month per employee for health insurance. Finally, there was a slight increase in workers' compensation costs, and those costs have been incorporated into the proposed 2019 budget. So moving forward through your handout materials, again, I won't go through this in depth, but the resolution that you're going to be asked to pass, assuming that there isn't any other changes to the budget, has been prepared here and is in draft form for your review. Attached to that resolution is an Exhibit A, which again is a summary document of the various funds of the city, and where we're making certain transfers between funds have been outlined in there. And it does show that the city's levy proposed for 2019 is a total of $2,791,464. The total proposed local government aid that the city will receive in 2019 is $4,129,956. So the single source of revenue, largest source of revenue that we get is from local government aid, and that comes from the state of Minnesota based on a formula of need, and that amount increased only about $5,800 over what we received for 2018. This exhibit, as well as the attachment behind it, outline the various appropriations that the Budget and Finance Committee had proposed for Music in the Park, Senior Center, the Bronco Foundation Museum, Bacchus AB Building, and KCC TV. You can see that the airport share there is listed under Other. For the Forest Hill Cemetery Association, there's $10,000 that have been included in the budget, but the Budget and Finance Committee does not want to allocate and make that expenditure unless and until we negotiate certain terms with the Cemetery Association for representation and how that cemetery is managed. You can see that there's some money identified there for the Recreation Commission, as well as $10,000 for the healthcare initiative that would go to the Rainy River Community College. and that's half of what it was for 2018 and the 2 previous years. So moving on, again, there's a summary of the partnership agencies, and then we've included some graphic depictions of what's happening with the budget. You can see a pie chart of the 2018 budgeted revenues. The next page shows a pie chart of the 2019 budgeted revenues. And for revenues, about 29% of the total city revenues come from local government aid. Only 20% comes from our property tax levy. Water fees are about 14%, sanitary sewer fees are about 15%, and the ambulance fees are about 10%. There is a Voyageurs National Park lease revenue that comes in, that's $1.3 million, and that's basically payments from the GSA, federal government, to pay for the lease payments that they make for the Voyageurs National Park headquarters building. The other miscellaneous category is about 3% of the total budgeted revenues. And that would include building permits and other miscellaneous fees.
Please.
Mr. I had a question. So, this council at our last meeting voted to up our ambulance fees, yet our projections are going down?
The budgeted revenues, the expenditure side on the ambulance has not changed because it's based on the projected runs, and so we're showing a revenue neutral ambulance fund with expenditures that are the same as the expenditures would be. So the revenues would be the same. I think based on my earlier comments, it's fair to assume that there'd be perhaps a surplus of about $40,000 in the ambulance fund based on the new revenue structure that's put in place. Again, we have to wait and see what the actual number of transfers and emergency calls are. And I think any surplus funds that would come in that we would want to divert to offsetting the deficit that we have. Actually, our cash deficit in the ambulance fund as of the end of October was $505,000. But that cash amount does not account for any of the receivables that are on the books. And historically, we received about 46% of that. So you can see that we still have a deficit of about half of that amount. So.
Further, City Administrator, I'd like to...
I don't have anything else. I think the rest of the documents, there's just different charts and graphs that illustrate the trend in local government aid and taxes. The final comment I would just make is the last couple of sheets in your packet. The League of Minnesota Cities released some information that shows, based on the preliminary levies that were done in 2019, what's happening with levies. And on the last page, I would just point out that statewide, the state tax has about a 0% change for 2019. For counties statewide, there's about a 5% change, and it's an increase. Cities statewide was a 6.2% increase. Townships was about 2.1%, and schools an 8.1% increase, with special districts 4%. In the text below that, it says that that cities that have proposed increases between 5 and 10% totaled 274, and that's the category that the City of International Falls falls in. There's a total of about 853 cities in the state of Minnesota, so that's about 32% of all the cities in the state increased their proposed levies between 5 and 10%, and the City of International Falls comes within that 5 and 10%. There were a total of 133 cities, or 16%, that proposed increases in excess of 10%. So we're above the halfway mark, but we fall about where half the cities were in the state.
Thank you. With the council's permission, I'd like to reverse the order here and have the questions and comments from the public first before we move into any further questions or comments. And I'd like to...
One question, just one question. Are we decreasing our reserves by $120,900?
Mr. Mayor, in answer to that question, actually, we're reducing the reserves by $130,900. There's $120,900 that are shown under the 101 fund, and there's an additional $10,000 that falls under the 809 Economic Development Fund. In that fund, actually it's $14,000, but $10,000 of that is a change from the last time that the Budget and Finance Committee had looked at this, and that includes the additional funding for the healthcare initiative was added into that. So there's a $10,000 reduction in the general fund reserve, or in the reserves for the healthcare initiative, and then there's $30,900, which include the changes that were made to the other appropriations on that Exhibit A and that we discussed. So the last budget that you would have seen, Councilor Drogo, would have been 0 decrease in reserves, and after the last Budget and Finance Committee meeting, it increased to $130,900
Right there,
spent
so
on.
we spent some money.
Not a little bit either.
Joking.
All right, thank you. Just for the record, would note that we have Miss Julie Melstrom, Miss Judy Potter, and Mr. Scott Gerlach here from the public. And would you folks have any questions or comments with regard to this budget, the levy? I'll start with Julie here first. If you.
Okay, I do. I have a real problem. I understand, I see the Bacchus, you are raising it back up to $60,000. How many years have they been going? How many years have they been in business?
10 years.
Okay, they should be able to now. We as a city, we helped them out to begin with. There are many other things that we need to put this money to. And I have a real problem because I'll tell you something, they leave those lights on for 3 days at a time, and I'm not paying their light bills. And neither should anybody else, taxpayers. And Ken knows, I've told him many times I've been up there, and I've gone over there and I said, turn your friggin' lights off, you know. So I think they should be able to handle themselves now. In fact, I think they should be decreased more. We've got money where we got to put other places. And this TV business, okay, there was a petition sent around. People did not want this TV, and they went ahead and they did it. Now they want more money. No, I think this is wrong because the people voted it down, and they socked it to the people, and now they want more money. And I disagree with that. You can take that money and put it somewhere else. Okay. Does not the Bronco Foundation, isn't that owned by the county?
The museum is owned by the county. The city and the county have worked together on the Bronco Museum.
See, I have a real issue with the county. They don't pay what we have to pay. And this is bad, that they expect the city...
Talking about the taxpayers.
Well, just on different things here, you know.
Taxpayers of the county don't pay the same as the city.
And you know, like the Bacchus, those people use the Bacchus more than our city people.
And the county does contribute to Bacchus.
How much? Do we know?
24,000.
Pardon me?
I believe it's 24,000.
Well, there you go. Only 24,000. They want 60,000 from us. We give them 50,000. That's ridiculous. It should be, everybody should be able to pay the same amount, 50-50.
And the 24,000 that the county pays to Bacchus is for rental space of facility space. So it's not a true donation like the city gives.
Yeah, see, that's wrong. 10 years, they should be able to take care of themselves, and if they can't, well, then they can go out of business like the rest of the city people are doing right now. Okay, this Rainy River Health incentive. I think that's a okay idea with stipulations. I don't know if we can have stipulations or not, I don't know. But if we're going to give them money and they want to get nurses, whatever, I think that those people that go for that training should stay in this town, because we are short of nurses. And if they don't, well then I don't think we should contribute.
I'd like to have that rule for everybody, but
Pardon me?
I said I'd like to have that for everybody.
No,
You
but
work
I'm
in the
just
city.
saying, I'm just saying, if they want that program going, we train these people, they should stay here, and that's the reason they want them trained here, so they keep them here. So why should our taxpayers pay out for those people that go out of town and work somewhere else? You know, I mean, it's really sad, and I'm sure you see it, but our town is going under, big time. And this is very sad for me to watch it, very sad. And it's like nobody cares. Nobody cares. There's no pride in what it looks like. Nothing, you know. It's very, very sad. But the money of these things here can go up some other places besides this. You know, I think that the council, the new one, I hope they look into it better and take care of it. Now, why did you raise it 9% levy?
The city is trying to do more work in infrastructure improvements, and so the last few years we've been increasing the levy to help have more money for that.
Okay, that's fine, but I think 9% at this big shot is a big amount. They should have done a little bit each year, and then it doesn't. Their taxes went up, my taxes went up, and I live in slumland. You know, a lot of people's house taxes went up. You know, and you're going to tax the old people right out of their houses. They don't have any money.
With all due respect, the 9% on a $100,000 house is $45 a year.
But still, but even if it's the $45, whatever, some of these people, they don't have any money. We are a very poor town right now. We are known as #1 poor town in the state of Minnesota. We never used to be. But you know, $45, Joe, is $45 when people are in a fixed income. And I hate to see the people be out in the streets without homes. You know, it's bad.
Please, Councilor Briggs.
Julie, I think it's important for you to know that when we first got into the budget, it would have been a 38% levy increase to keep up with all the budget requests that we had. And based on going back to our city leaders, or ask them to go back and redo their budgets, is where we got it down to 9% now.
And cutting.
Our infrastructure is so bad. We got to do something, because
Hey, I
every
know.
time you don't, it
This
compounds
town's
what
a
it's going to
mess.
cost.
It's an absolute embarrassment mess. There is absolutely, Brian, no pride anymore. You know, when I was on the council with you years ago, what a difference then to now.
I agree.
And there's absolutely no pride. I mean, I try to keep my place up, and I'll tell you, I got drug heads living around me. They raised my taxes. Why? And I got drug heads? This is ridiculous. I try to keep my home up the best I can do it, and I'm on a fixed income.
Likewise. Likewise.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, you understand, so you
Yes,
feel
I do.
bad for these older people, you know, and stuff, but I just think that this money that these people want, the Bacchus and the TV and Rainy River, take another look at it. Well, the airport, but take another look at it, because that money can be going somewhere else, and they gotta figure it out just like we gotta figure it out with our homes. I mean, I liked it when I saw it down to 50, and then they all screamed and hollered and wanted more money. No, you've been there 10 years, you take care of yourself just like we do. If you can't take care of yourself, then shut her down.
All right, further.
So anyway, that's my comment. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right. Mr. Gerlach, you asked for the,
Yeah, just one question with the airport.
please.
Well, wasn't the federal government supposed to go for your cost a year?
The airline does receive a subsidy for servicing Brainerd, Hibbing, Bemidji, and International Falls. I think.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think we're a little over $2 million for International Falls per year,
All right.
and the money goes to the airline for servicing us. Now they do pay the rent for the square footage that they have in the terminal building, and they do pay for landing fees at the airport. So we do receive some monies back from the airline for that.
So that could help offset your cost of your runway, because you don't when you take off and
Right. Other questions?
thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Potter, Judy Potter?
Well, I guess I'm looking at, where is all really, really nice. But when it comes to the taxpayer, that's what I'm looking at, because two here of our previous value, the market value of our house. 9%, you think, well, that isn't a lot, but if every year they're going to be to get a building permit, well, that's tax on everything you buy, that's a tax. That's another tax, so we're being taxed on tax on tax. And now we're at the age where we can't do a lot of stuff for ourselves. Our value keeps going up, and I don't think our
Well, the valuation, though, has nothing to do with the increase in the levy. The 9% does not equate to the valuation. The county assessor does all the assessing for the city, and they will take and review the sales of homes in the area that you live and determine whether or not the value of your home is comparable to some of those. And so there could be an increase in the value just based on what sales are showing in the area. And that, and then also the state comes in, the state of Minnesota comes in and reviews what the county assessor has done. And I believe it was 2 years ago, city administrator, that the state came in and told them to increase International Falls on those over 100,000 by 10% and to lower those under 100 by
175 by
10%. So the state comes in and dictates to the assessor, and so that increase was placed on all of our valuations in the city.
That was 2 years ago, right, Bob?
That was 2 years ago.
Wow.
So, but that would have been in the period she was talking about from 2013 to 2018, why some of the increases in valuations have taken place.
A lot has changed in
Oh, the other thing, and I think the mayor pointed this out, the city will set a dollar amount that we need, and the county will do the same. And so they add all those dollars together, and to figure out the levy rate, then they take the tax capacity, which is dependent upon two things, the net tax capacity rate, which varies by property tax, and the assessed value. And so what I handed out here gives you one big problem that we've had for over 14 years, 16 years, as far as I mean, we can talk about some things, but this is the elephant in the room. We have lost this year, if our net tax, and keeping the valuation at $26,725,300 for the base mill that is in town, and applying the net tax capacity rate that the legislature enacted in 2002 versus what existed before that, results in a loss of taxes this year, or no, 2018, I'm looking at 2018, of $705,000 in local property taxes. $451,000 of that was the city's loss. So what I'm getting at is we've had a tax policy for the last decade and a half to shift the local property tax burden to property tax owners, to homeowners, and away from large industry. And so when you feel the burden, you feel it greater when they set up a structure where more of the burden is going to fall on homeowners. So there is no such thing as a property tax cut, really only a tax shift. And that's what we've been living with.
Cynthia, why was the mill, why were their taxes decreased?
Because at the state legislature in 2002, they decided to cut the net property tax rate for large industry in half.
Who's
The state legislators. They decided to do that, cut it in half.
Power companies did the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And all of that falls back. Remember how I argued about the EITE law and how it's going to hurt city ratepayers? Same thing. It was a gift to the taconite companies on the Iron Range. So until we start paying attention to what's happening at the state, I mean, we're all focused on the minutia here, like $60,000 for Bacchus. We're talking about $451,000 loss in 18.
I understand.
And every year.
I understand.
Every year. And some years it was more.
I understand.
So over the course of 15 years, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars to the city.
But I'm just bringing up where that money could be put somewhere else.
We need to talk to our state legislators and get things changed around. This gutted Minnesota rural property tax base. This law did, by the way. Because that, you don't find major paper industries right in the middle of Minneapolis, St. Paul. You find them out in the rural areas. Find your major industry out in the rural areas. This law gutted that. And then at the same time, the state legislature did not keep up with their promise for funding LGA. So if you're, that's our issue. We need to be fighting. Yeah, well, that's the major thing. Let's talk about real money. Real money is this issue.
Well, and certainly what Councilor Jacksaw has said is correct, that the legislature did make cuts in the tax capacity, cutting in half. Also, the paper mill shut down some equipment, and
that's the valuation,
and that affected the evaluations too.
But this is with the valuation staying as it is. I filtered that out. We have two things going on, because at one point, the mill was paying $3.5 million in local property tax. Well, no, probably $3 million, because a portion went to the state, but the vast majority was local. In 1998, that paper mill, that was after Insulite went down, was paying $3.5 million in property taxes. Today, they're paying less than $1 million. Part of that is the valuation. Their valuation on that plant was $70 million. Today, it's $26 million. I didn't calculate a loss on valuation because that's a whole other argument. What can you say about the valuation of paper mills when the paper industry is in trouble? I don't know. What happened in Fort Francis? The city of Fort Francis was asked to pay the paper company money back for taxes they paid in prior years. And they did, due to the argument that they said their values were overstated. So, I mean, what the mayor brings up is correct, but this 451 loss is without that. This is with just the effect of the net tax
Legislative action. Yeah.
change. I mean, I'm angry because I'll tell you what, everybody up here struggles. And we hear stuff like, well, we're not being close with our money. When you have the state legislature pulling the rug out from under you, and people don't know it, it's frustrating.
Please, City Administrator.
Just to add some information to that conversation, I believe that the legislator's intent in doing that was, well, I want to make the point that it's not isolated to just large industries. That tax rate applies to every commercial industrial property in the state of Minnesota, be it $500,000 in value or $5 million in value or $26 million in value. So it applies to...
It didn't apply to law firms.
It applies to, it depends on the valuation, and the intent of that was to make Minnesota more competitive for businesses relative to the adjacent states of South Dakota and Wisconsin, which had lower commercial industrial taxes or no. South Dakota doesn't have a sales tax, so that was part of the reason why the legislature did that. But Councilor Jacksaw's points about the impacts to local government budgets is absolutely correct, and there has been an impact there. And it has had the tendency to shift more of the tax burden to residential properties. There's actually 26 different tax classifications in the Minnesota tax code. It's not just commercial, industrial, residential, but it did have a tendency of shifting it more to other properties, like residential.
And I might add, as far as helping business, for 20 years, we've been saying, okay, corporations need another break. Corporations shouldn't have a high income tax rate. Corporations need a property tax break. Corporations shouldn't have to pay the PUC utility rate that they have. We need a cut there. How many jobs have we created locally in the paper mill with that kind of policy? How well has the trickle-down theory worked? I don't think it's worked very well.
Well, I would
Disagree.
No, I don't disagree. I'm just telling you that over 100 paper mills have closed in the country, and certainly trying to keep the paper mill here competitive with the world, I think, has been the goal of the legislature.
I can't.
585 jobs that we have over there are very important to the economy of this community.
I'd like to believe that policy works, but I frankly think we've been sold a bill of goods, because if you take a look at PCA's corporate tax statements, not corporate financial statements, which I have, I mean...
May I please go for a point of order back to what we're actually talking about, which is the budget of this year's budget, please?
Yep.
Well, I'm just...
we just got down a side road, and I'd like to come back
Well, I mean, this isn't really a side road. This is like the underlying ground we're all...
But we can't fix it in this year's budget.
We're not the legislature, so we can't do anything about that.
If you don't understand the problem we're facing, then you're not going to come up with the right solution.
Well, Mr. Gerlach, please.
Excuse me for interrupting again. I went to pay my real estate to Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson. Was in Grand Rapids. That's a hell of a lot more than up here. Wow. That house was on the lake. Double down there compared. These figures are new. I have no idea. I'm just quoting what he told me, and I'm relating.
Well, I think, and he's correct in that. I would have to say, and I think Councilor Jacksaw has said this for many years, is that city taxpayers are helping to subsidize those folks who live outside the city. And to the extent that recreation, library, just a number of services that the city provides are utilized by citizens outside the city that they don't help to pay for in any fashion. And so some of that, that's why their taxes are lower outside. And how we can get that, the only way would be to annex all of that property, bring it into the city, and have it all, everybody paying their fair share.
But you stated that lost, right? I'm confused on it. How can you justify these prices with these late payments? If you look at the house tax they're paying.
Yes,
The
Councilor
reason
Kraus.
they pay half is they don't pay city taxes. Half of your tax bill goes to the county, and then the other half goes to the city. Well, it might not be half, but it's a third. A third of our tax bill goes to the county. 2/3 goes to the city. They don't pay the city portion. They only pay the county portion. So if you had the
school district.
and the school district, but I mean, so you pay. They don't pay the city taxes at all. So we pay the county taxes at the same rate that they pay it at, and then we pay the city taxes on top of that. I'm just throwing that out
The
there.
combined levy tax rate in 2018 was 131%. 84% was the city, 33% was the county, and 23% was the school district, and that doesn't include the special operating levy for the school district.
So they don't pay the city portion. So the equal valued home on Main Street versus an equal value somewhere out in the county, the person that's out in the county is going to pay a lot less in taxes than the person in the city because they don't pay the city taxes. It won't be half, but they will pay less. But it doesn't stop them from using the library or putting their kids in rec or anything else. They have full access to everything.
Yeah, we pay for it all.
And the disparity increases our problem as far as growing our tax base, because if you move into town, you're going to build a house. You're going to build it 5 meters off of the city limits and pay half the tax? You're going to think about it, right?
That's probably why. Paper. And what was said?
We legally can't require people to live in the city. I wish we
I
could.
should have said that.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Ms.
wish-
Potter, you have a question or comment?
So then on our tax,
We pay the county,
Yes.
county portion, and we
Yes.
pay the city portion.
Correct.
Correct.
We're doing it all.
It doesn't prevent a person saying living east of Second Bridge from utilizing any of the services provided in the city of International Falls, including the library or anything else.
well, what do we get?
Less than
I can't comment on that because I don't know.
Less than we used to.
Yeah.
Furthermore, I'm sorry, but the state government gave the county $800,000 more in monies and gave us $5,000 more. The state legislature did that. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, may I give my thoughts on the budget? Okay, so I'm the budget and finance chair for the city, and we, as Ken pointed out earlier, we started this budget wanting to put money in for public infrastructure. Ultimately, that was our goal. That's why we tried to come up with the 1% sales and use tax so we could put stuff to our infrastructure. That's to fix the stuff that's broken. That's the stuff to try to get maintained, but that's not doing our daily maintenance. That's to continue to catch up to what hasn't happened in the past. So our goal ended up being public infrastructure. Looking at this budget, we decided that we can put $49,287 to public infrastructure in 2018. With that being said, we raised the taxes of the citizens of International Falls $230,000 so that we could go for public infrastructure and give them $49,287. But we also got an increase in LGA for $5,000. We also ended up pulling money out of our general fund. So we're actually pulling money out of our reserves going into next year of $130,000. So we ended up getting an additional $365,000 to put towards our public works and our infrastructure projects in International Falls, but we were only able to come up with $49,287 to put towards our public works and infrastructure. But we're going to be able to give to our community, to our very wonderful nonprofits in our community, and I am not understating that. Bacchus and the cemetery and Rainy River and the senior center, all of those are amazing projects that we have in our community that need to be funded, and I get and understand that. If you add up all of the funds that we're giving away as a city, we're giving away $118,500. That's how much we're giving away of taxpayer dollars to organizations in our community that are really important. We can't fund our own projects. We can't fund our own infrastructure in the city of International Falls. But we sure as heck can give out $118,500. And do we need Bacchus? Yeah, dang right we do. Bacchus is fantastic and it's a wonderful piece of our community. And without it, we would be missing a wonderful asset in our community. But we might not have roads to get there. We may not have roads to be able to get to Bacchus in the near future. Rainy River Community College, we gave them $20,000 a year for the last 3 years to get their nursing program up and running. Fantastic. It was a key to our community because we have issues with nursing and we need to have nursing in our community. So we gave them $60,000 over 3 years, just like we gave Bacchus money to get started and get up and running. Now we're giving them $10,000 this year, probably $10,000 next year or the year after that, and $10,000 after that. So now we're going to be funding a program for however long it takes to fund that program to make sure that Rainy River, because that's very important to our community, stays up and running. Music in the parks, $1,000. They provide entertainment in our community. And I think that Wednesday concert in the park is the most wonderful thing. I like to be part of it, my family, and I enjoy that. It's only $1,000, but it's a piece of $118,000 that we're just giving away. The museum, fantastic. We have one of the best museums in Minnesota, and that is hands down the truth. But we've given away $31,000 to fund somebody else's museum. ACC TV, they came up and they've started growing and they've been doing great stuff. They're filming all of our events in our community, from the bass tournament to the 4th of July. They're doing wonderful things in our community. Give them $5,000.
They're also paying $14,000 a year in franchise tax.
And so we have $118,000 plus the Senior Citizen Center, which is $1,500. We're contractually obligated to give them $2,000 a year, but we're going to give them $3,500 this year because we have extra money. And the cemetery, we've given them $10,000 a year every year as long as I've been on the council, and they're struggling immensely. And without the funding of the city of $10,000, they're probably going to fold.
And the county gives zero.
And the county gives zero. So my point is this. We had a council meeting earlier in this year, and I asked if we're going to cut funding from our employees, we're going to cut funding from our streets and our roads, then we need to cut funding for 20% of all of these appropriations, because they're all important to our community. At that meeting, I didn't realize when I said we're going to cut 20%, it was 20% of what was proposed. It wasn't 20% of what they had last year, but everyone asked, not everyone, some of them asked for more money. Some of them didn't. but we cut 20% from what was proposed. So some of them took a heck of a cut because they asked for what they had last year. Others asked for more money, but we cut 20% of what was proposed, so they actually got an increase. We had some that never asked for money before, and so we cut 20% of what they asked for, which was still more than they ever gotten because they never had money before. I'm really, really, really struggling that we're pulling money out of reserves, that we have raised our levy amount $230,000, and we're getting an additional $5,000 for LGA. We made a decision as a city council that we were going to cut 20% of our appropriations, but we ended up adding, I'm guessing it was $42,000 from, I believe it was $42,000, and I'm not a happy camper on how we got to where we're at. With that being said, we will be having another budget and finance meeting on Monday. I've already spoke to the mayor about having that. We need to get our priorities straight as a city. We can't fund our own infrastructure. We just asked the citizens of International Falls to help us out with it. And now that we have a little bit of money, well, we don't because we're still pulling money out of reserves. We're going to give out more money to the great organizations that we have in our community. There's a lot of nonprofits in our community that are struggling, that are not coming to the city and asking for a handout. They're figuring out a way, they're doing fundraisers, they're doing whatever they can to survive, they're cutting their own costs. But I'm just so frustrated with where we're at right now, and I really look forward to seeing if we can't chop something out of the budget, and any monies that we chop out of the budget, put back into either our general fund or put it into our streets and infrastructure. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. City Administrator, just a point on the money from reserves. A portion of that money will be returned over the next few years as we budget monies for the replacement of the fire truck.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, of the $120,900, there's
90.
$40,900 is the number that went to other agencies through appropriation. The other $90,000 was an amount that was cut from the general fund to pay back to the EDA to offset the cost to purchase the used ladder truck that we should be receiving.
And Harley, Councilor Drobel, the reason that we argued for that, and I knew you'd be upset, I thought you'd be upset, but the $90,000 was so that we had some monies in the EDA if we do anything with housing, and we just spent, some money on that, so that was the reason behind that. I mean, if we don't fix our housing, we're going to shrink our tax base even further. You know what I mean? It's a downward spiral. We really have to fix some problems with decent housing, and that EDA is sort of a community development fund as well. And when we pull all that money out to buy a fire truck, which is really a general fund expenditure, frankly, then we deplete our opportunity to use the housing study.
So what houses are you looking at? To fix?
Well, we just got the study done, but no matter what we do, you can't do anything without some funds. Even if you get grants, you're going to have matching, you're going to have overhead to write the grants. There's always some costs up front that you need to be able to fund.
And if houses aren't worth fixing.
Well, no, and I agree. Whatever we do is still to be determined, but there is no doubt that we will need some funds. And if we pull it all out for a general fund expenditure, we're not going to be able to do anything. And I think most people feel that we need to do something in that area. I mean, there was a lot of energy around the housing study, and
It seems like, well, I'll just bring this little. It seems like, you guys started things, but then all of a sudden you never continued finishing them. A lot of things out there, Cynthia, that you have not finished.
oh, really? Like what?
Well, I'm not bringing it up right now because this is a budget meeting, but I'm just saying, you know, you need to, once you bring something up, let's finish going through it and get it done with. Stuff's still out there, and you guys are gonna be gone now. Now the new council has to take over, and who knows when it'll get done. You know, basically no. But I'm not bringing it up, I just said it thing here, so.
Well, and I guess, you know, I certainly don't disagree with what Councilor Droba has summarized here. I will say, you know, the music in the park, the senior center in the city, the museum is in the city, the community center, Bacchus, is in the city. So all of those, and I don't disagree that they ought to, hopefully they'll become more self-sufficient. I think they'll always require some monies to keep operating. They provide food programs in the summertime for youth, places to play basketball and volleyball. So I think, you know, they are maintaining a good community center for the community. Do we need to have someone on their board and helping to work on that? That could be a possibility. The cemetery, things are changing. They are willing to have a counselor, someone from the city council serve on their cemetery association board. And I think that, you know, we've been funding the cemetery for 40 or 50 years. And it's allowed by state law, and we've been doing that.
That level has been much lower, though, in the past. It didn't go up to 10. The maximum level we can fund it at is 10,000. And we can't go above that legally.
I think it might have been 8,000 for a number of years. I can't remember. But in the past 5 or 6 years, it's been 10,000.
10,000, yeah.
My only concern with the comment, or your comment, Mayor, is we're giving Bacchus $60,000. We're not even funding that amount in our own infrastructure. And that was our goal of this entire budget season, was to fund infrastructure. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm picking on Bacchus or these groups, because I'm not. They're all wonderful organizations. It's just everyone else is tightening up their budget. Everybody is. From our small businesses in our community to our households in the community, as the citizens that came in. They're tightening up their budget because their taxes are going up. And now we're going to put a sales tax on top of that. But then we're giving away money. It doesn't make sense to me. And I obviously am only one vote on this council. But I think we should fund all of these groups in some capacity, even the cemetery, which we earlier in the year decided that we were not going to fund because of different reasons. I think we should fund all of these groups, but to push them back up to the same levels as what they have been before, or raising the amounts as we're cutting funds on our own departments. It doesn't make sense to me. And I do believe we should fund them. That's fine, we should fund them. But to the tune of what they asked for, with that being said, we should just ask every nonprofit group in town to come in and ask for money. They're all doing great stuff. I mean...
How about the households? Can we come and ask for money?
But that's my
You're being
point.
a little facetious.
I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No.
I'm sorry.
But it's true. We have a lot of great organizations in our community. And what makes one organization better than another one? Because they come to the city and ask for not a handout, ask for help for their funding? I mean, the Elks do great things. They do a community dinner for Christmas and Thanksgiving. They're doing great for our community. They should come in and ask for money. VFW, they're marching in every parade in our community, from the Bass Tournament, 4th of July. They should come in and ask for money. We have wonderful groups in our community, but that doesn't mean that taxpayer money should be going to them.
Well, you supported KCC TV, and we heard tonight that that's something that folks question.
Well, that's an unfair characterization.
No, it's not.
We did a survey. over 50% of the people found that they would find a local channel useful. Oh, yes, they did. I have the survey at home. There wasn't a vote, it was a survey. It wasn't, so 25%, half of those people didn't want to pay a tax. Now, if we did a survey on the airport and said, before we had one, do you want an airport? Oh, yes, we would. Would you pay a tax for it? How many people would actually say that? If you ask people if they want to pay a tax for something, they will say no.
Well, yeah.
Of course. I am going to further say this, that the cable subscribers pay $14,000 a year over to the city. They have collected 5 times, almost $70,000 in revenue from the cable subscribers that have TV.
Oh, I know what.
So the $5,000 that is being paid back to KCC-TV is a partial reimbursement to provide a service to the cable subscribers.
People keeps going up so we can pay you over there?
No, that's been in effect for 5 years. Now, secondly, the tradition and the business model for a city franchise channel is well established in every community in northern Minnesota. And so it's generally the cable channel is supported by the city. You can't say that about a senior center, but you certainly can say that about the public channel in Bemidji and Hibbing and Chisholm and Virginia and Ely and Biwabic. They all, in Duluth, they all have public channels that are funded by far more than $5,000 a year by the city.
That's their issue.
Well, I'm telling you that that is a typical function of a city. But further, if you cut out all the amenities in a city and leave people with nothing, it's not going to help economic development. That community center is an economic engine. It brings in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in grants.
That's what I'm just saying.
That $60,000 is leveraged many times over. If you didn't have a stable funding stream, they couldn't survive from year to year. It's important to have that stable funding.
They should be able to run on themselves, Cynthia, now. They can get, just like he was saying, you know, they can make money, go out there and sell goodies or whatever. They've had it long enough from the taxpayers. And when they leave their lights on, like I told you, 3 days at a time, day in and day out, why should we pay their light bill? That's ridiculous, Cynthia, and I see it from my kitchen window, and I watch over the weekend, and first, second, and third floor's lights are all on for 3 days at a time. Nobody shuts the lights off over there. How big do you think our light bill would be if we left ours on that long?
Well, now that we're paying for the taconite industry's
Why are we giving
light
money
bill,
to leave their lights on,
it's even higher.
is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Are we talking like in the hallway or in the offices?
The whole top, the whole little...
Okay, because I rent, and my company rents an office in there, we pay our own light
Well,
bill.
I see it from the front end, from my kitchen, and I've told Ken many times, I sit down to turn off their friggin' lights. You know, I see it. I get up in the middle of the night. And,
The other piece I will add is the $60,000 is less than 10% of their overall budget for the year.
Is what?
Less than 10% of their overall budget for the year.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying they should be able to... I know, Joe.
That's a very small contribution.
Well, but every year they come back and they want more. They were getting $65,000 when I was there, then they wanted $70,000. You know, I like that kind of money too. But I'm just saying, you know, money needs to go somewhere else. We're in trouble. Anyway.
City Administrator, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this has been a good discussion. As you know, the budget. So I think from a staff standpoint, we'd be looking for some direction from the council now. If you have other questions, I'd be happy to hear them and try and address them. If you want to make changes in this budget, I'd be happy to entertain those, so staff has some time to do that now. or we can address it as Councilor Droba had talked about at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting on Monday, December 10th, but we will need to have some final determinations for sure by that meeting so that we can have all of our final budget information ready for the City Council for adoption on December 17th. So, from that standpoint, we're just looking for some direction from you now. If you want to wait till Monday the 10th, that's fine. But if I can answer or other input, I think I'd like to hear that.
Okay, Councilor Briggs first, then Councilor Kraus.
I'm not going to belabor anything. Harley has said everything that I would have said. And unless we do something at Budget and Finance on Monday, I will not vote for this levy. Because going into the whole budget process, I agreed with Harley right up from front. If we're asking Ted and all the people out there and our city staff to cut their budgets, then I only thought it was fair that everyone else is going to get cut also. You know, I agree with them. All those organizations are great and wonderful, but doggone it, if our own city has to cut their budgets to, you know, make this go, then I think the others have got to take a cut also.
All right, further? Thank you. Councilor Kraus.
I would add that I agree, but we just had a budget and finance meeting last Monday.
Yes.
And went over all of this. And we're going to do it again.
1 o'clock on Monday.
We were there for 3 hours. And now we're going to do it again. I have to be honest with you. I can't make that meeting. It doesn't work for me.
Well, we could make, I'll make a motion to restore the allocations to where they were when this council last voted on it. And we voted on this budget at council. wasn't it true? We voted on the budget at council.
Voted on
with
the levy.
The old allocation.
Voted on the levy.
We didn't vote on the budget? No? Okay.
Adopt the preliminary budget.
Well, we adopted a preliminary budget back in September, absolutely, and set the levy at 9%.
We hadn't at that time
The
those.
Finance Committee meeting is where there were some modifications to the appropriations for the other agencies.
Prior to the preliminary?
So, no, it was just
It was last
on
Monday.
November 26th, I think it was.
Oh, it was...
Last Monday.
No, but going back to the one on the appropriations, was that prior to the preliminary or after the?
It was at the preliminary.
It was at the preliminary.
So we did vote on it then?
We voted on those cuts at the meeting, and that's why I was so shocked that not only did we bring everything back to the to the previous, to the request amounts, not only did we bring them up to the request amounts, we added monies from the budget there. And I'll be the first to apologize. I'm the Budget and Finance Chair, and I couldn't make that meeting. I had, it doesn't matter, there was a personal thing that came up that I had to take care of. And I feel horrible that I wasn't there, but the reality is there is no way I'm going to vote for this budget if we are going to continue to raise taxes and cut city services. I mean, that's what we're doing.
And I'm sorry, I missed that meeting also, but I would have expressed the same concerns if I'd have been there, that Harley, I'm not going to belabor it again. I said that from the get-go. If we're asking our city managers to cut their budgets, then everybody's going to have to cut it some.
I voted for the cuts originally. I will join you again. I am sort of going both ways. What I was trying to do, and I even said it at the meeting, I'm just trying to get consensus here so we can have a vote, right? And at that meeting that day, that's what I thought we would do. I also predicted that you would not go along with this, and that's true. So we're back to square one. But I will build consensus whichever way it needs to be done. I think we are anguishing over, I mean, we need to just decide on a course of action and stick with it, right?
It's not fair for Teddy to cut his budget down to basically nothing, and the chamber comes in and is asking for more money than they got last year, and we're giving it to them. I don't think that's right. I don't think the people that voted me in this position would, want me to vote that way.
All right, therefore, I will offer a motion that we restore the allocations to the agencies as to what they were. The senior center was $2,000, Bronco was $24,900, Bacchus was $48,000, KCC TV was $4,000. The Forest Hill Cemetery didn't have anything, and neither did Rainy River Healthcare Initiative. It was $0. That was the original allocation.
Well, there's really no need for a motion, because the preliminary budget that was adopted, if we remain with that, what was done last Monday in restoring some of these is just a recommendation to the City Council. And so if the recommendation is not accepted, the motion just to continue with the preliminary budget figures that we had will do what you're requesting.
I would still like, I would still like to have that budget and finance meeting and have a conversation. And that's fine. We had a recommendation that was going to go to council. I appreciate that. I would love to entertain that conversation again at committee.
I add that I absolutely cannot make that work if it's a 1 o'clock or a 2 o'clock meeting. I'm not open until 4 o'clock that day.
What would your position be? Are you with the preliminary budget figures that we had previously, or with the recommendation that came out of last week?
I would lean more towards our original with the readdressing the permanent improvement, as Councilor Droba had.
Which would reduce this by, what, 41,000?
Well, if your actions would not change from the last meeting, it would be $130,900. Would be the $40,900 for appropriations to these other groups under appropriations, and then $1,000 to the EDA. That was part of the same recommendation, so it would be a total of $130,900.
The preliminary budget would only save $40,900.
The preliminary budget didn't have a
reserves down. It would be a reduction of what I.
But we would be taking those reserve funds from the EDA instead of from the general fund. That's how that was a preliminary.
There would be no change. There would be no
Right.
And there would be a $1,000 less reduction in the 809 fund, and then everything else would be the same. The appropriations would go back to what was essentially outlined by Councilor Jackson when she was proposing to change her motion. And under other, there wouldn't be anything for the Cemetery Association or for the Healthcare Initiative.
And
both be $0.
And your chamber too wouldn't have that $14,000 drawdown, because $4,000 drawdown.
So the change would be there'd be no monies for the Forest Hill Cemetery for 2019, and none for the community college healthcare initiative for nurses training.
The community college, in their presentation, if I remember correctly, said that they would remain solvent for 2019, and they would be more looking at 2020 as when they would hit a budget issue. So our $10,000 would be more, they are carrying funds forward currently, and they would most likely carry that $10,000 forward. I'm not saying that I'm against giving them money. I am saying that they didn't need it for 2019. They're looking more towards 2020, and we could be in a position to better look at perhaps giving them $20,000 in 2020 versus this. It was clearly outlined in their budget summary that they do not need our $10,000 for 2019. So for us to give it to them right now, I think is foolhardy, when we could be taking that $10,000 and putting it in P&I or in another location, because they said clearly they did not need it. They are more concerned looking at the 2020 budget and going forward from there. Just my take on the matter.
No, I disagree with what you're saying.
So then is the Baptist going to stay at 50?
48.
48%.
Well, yes, if we stay with the preliminary budget, Bacchus would be at 48,000. Museum would be at 24, is it?
24.
Senior Center would be at 2,000. Music in the Park would be at 800.
It was actually, we left that at 1,000, didn't we? Oh, we didn't?
No, we took 20 off of it.
ACC TV would be at 4,000. There'd be no money for the cemetery and no money for Rainy River.
Teddy had a hand up.
Please.
If you were to cut back as the 20% based on $1,000 to the cemetery. I think it means for the cemetery needs. And I know where they're going to come. And they're going to come.
We don't have authorization to do that, though.
I know I don't. But what I'm saying is you're basing your cut on Bacchus on this year's increase, which was 10,000 or 60. The rest of the entities, which would bring down 10,000, you could still fund the cemetery.
So in 2018, Bacchus was at 50,000?
Yes, that is correct.
I think it's a bad idea, but I think we should keep Bacchus at least at 48. Bacchus has been a partner on our housing project. They do, we have we use their gym at no charge. I think it's a bad idea to cut them any further.
So I would put Bacchus at 40,000, which would allow 10,000 for the cemetery.
It was never extra.
We're not going to, that would not be in the budget.
We just wouldn't take that out of reserves because we were pulling money from reserves.
Out of reserve, okay, I just all around, and I kind of got lost in the crossword puzzle here.
Fair enough.
We added the 10,000 to RRCC after we did the allocations.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right on. Good question.
I would, based off of what Commissioner Brokaw just said, and I do feel where Councillor Jackson is, if $40,000 is too little for Bacchus, and I have said they're fantastic for our community. If we put them at 45, give cemetery 5. And that splits up the money. It's the same amount. It's the same cut, but it's 5 and 5. If anyone would be open to that, that takes Bacchus down $5,000 from what they had last year. They were at 50,000. They go down to 45, and it gets some money to go to the cemetery.
I'm fine with that. I can't take it anymore.
I would propose that we take the 4,000 from KCC TV and give it to the cemetery. I think that's more needed out there, and I think that without the money, I think the cemetery association in the near future.
I think that the arguments that we had about funding KCC TV still hold, that without support from our governmental entities, and the county is planning on matching what the city provides to KCC TV, bring in $40,000 a year in grants. Our grantor is not eager to keep funding us because there is no city support for their own channel. So without that, we lose other funding.
But then let the county pay a higher amount that makes up with what they're not paying our city.
The city ratepayers are paying $14,000 a year. That's going into the general fund.
We have to pay so much, that's what they're talking about. They don't pay anything to the cemetery. They don't pay anything to the library, to the ambulance, They don't pay anything. The rec department, I know. I was on that committee, I know.
Cemetery is a higher priority than
It is.
case.
I mean, that cemetery needs help. Just
Take some of the general fund money that the cable subscribers pay and give it to the cemetery association as well.
no. Let the county take it.
And we don't get to pick what their budgets are. Those are what's submitted to us, and we're a partner agency, so we have.
County pays the same amount.
And the school district pays equitable amount for those two things, and that's the only reason those two don't come out of funding.
But we don't have to rubber stamp their budget. We could force cuts if we wanted to. We just never have. We pretty much rubber stamp that budget. The library, I think legally we don't have as much say-so, but we have representatives on the city council that represent the city council at those budget hearings. But that doesn't bind the rest of the city council to rubber stamp it. I think we should move this discussion for a budget meeting, because I think we cannot get anywhere tonight, frankly.
I agree with Councillor Jacksaw, but preliminarily, I think we should go with what we've talked about, leaving the, going back to the 20% off, the $800 for the music in the park, the senior center at $2,000, the Bronco Museum at $24,800, Citizens for Bacchus at $45,000, KCCTV at $4,000, and the cemetery at $5,000. And we'll start from there at the Budget and Finance meeting.
And zero for RRCC.
And zero for RRCC. We could go with that to our Budget and Finance meeting.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
I'll second.
So accepting Councillor Droba's motion, you've heard the numbers for the appropriations and other. Second by Councillor Jacksaw. This is a motion for direction to the administration in preparing a budget for consideration on December the 17th. I will oppose it because I don't believe that the KCC-TV should get $4,000 and not have funds for the cemetery. I think it's higher priority for the cemetery than KCC-TV.
And I respect where you're at. I think we can discuss those issues at the Budget and Finance meeting. This is just a starting point.
Let's discuss them right now.
8 o'clock.
I don't have to be to work till 5.
I'm getting hungry, though.
I think we should I call the question.
Further discussion? Question?
Just so I understand the motion, it's that we're taking the figures that we got and we're going to start there when we meet on Monday at 1 o'clock.
Correct.
Aye.
I will abstain.
Aye.
Can't be there on Monday.
But you can vote on what goes now if you want.
What's proposed? All my abstaining, I will vote aye. Yes.
You're going to vote aye? Okay. Aye, and I would vote no. There being 4 for the motion and 1 against, the motion carries. So, Administrator, you have direction?
I do, so meeting at 1 o'clock on Monday. Is there another time on Monday that all 5 of you could be present?
I will do my best to rearrange my schedule.
Well,
One is best for me.
I I will do my best to rearrange my
I
schedule.
know you had a conflict at 3, and I've got to drive to St. Paul after that meeting.
You're not open.
Nice, yeah.
I will work tomorrow morning to clear my schedule.
If you can get an hour for that meeting. Well, I know. He has a conflict at 3, and I'm leaving to drive to St. Paul, so.
I'll do my best.
All right. Nothing further to come before the public hearing and input meeting. Thank you all for your attendance here this evening and your input. Been very, very helpful. Appreciate your patience. We'll declare this hearing closed. Thank you.